Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, sponsored by the National Health Association. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and today I'm really delighted to have as my guest Onyx, who's a member of Raven Corps, which is a youth-centered community of young activists who are really working to create a more sustainable and compassionate world, and really doing some amazing work and operations to really expand the concept of social economic justice for all animals and men and humans and the planet itself. So welcome, Onyx. I'm so pleased that you're here. Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association, the oldest organization in the world championing the extraordinary benefits of a whole plant food diet and healthy lifestyle, as well as water-only fasting. We believe that health results from healthful living and focus on evidence-based science that promotes the health of you and your loved ones, as well as the health of all animals and the environment. We feature experts from a cross-section of disciplines within the plant nutrition, vegan, psychological, environmental, and animal compassion sectors. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, the NHA's Director of Health Education.
It's great to be here. I'm so happy that you wanted to have me here.
Yeah, and going over your group, Raven Corps, I know that it began under the direction of a very important person, Claire Howell, way back around 2016, where she was trying to find a way to get animal rights and animal liberation and getting a more youth-centered movement to support that. And she was going into the schools in the Portland, Oregon area, and at first started something called Youth for the Voiceless, and then it morphed into Raven Corps. Can you talk a little bit about the evolution of the organization itself and how it really came to be and how you yourself came to be involved in it?
Yeah. So I can't say too much about like the base inception of it because I just wasn't there at the moment. But I do know that it started as a bit of Claire working with like some youth groups in high schools, I'm pretty sure. So from there, it just kind of grew and, their message, and they kind of worked with a big important thing that Claire wanted to focus on was youth involvement, like you said. So it was getting youth involved and involved specifically in making decisions about the direction that the Corps was going to go in and the decisions that were going to be made, because that was important. Our youth are our future. So she wanted to give the youth a voice, and help facilitate that kind of in a way.
And I noticed that it's grounded, though you don't have to be vegan. It is grounded in the philosophy of veganism, which really becomes not only an eating plan, as you and I know, but it's also a kind of a political stance. It's really addressing the injustice and the oppression that goes on in the way food is prepared and the way we're handling and dealing with animals and the way we're affecting the environment. So, what were the aha moments for you to move into being a vegan yourself? I understand that you are. When did that happen in your life, and what was the motivation for that for you in your life?
Yeah, for me, going vegan happened 4 years ago. It was 2020, the height of the pandemic. Everyone was pretty isolated. I was mostly at home, but I'd recently picked up a job working for a meat shop that sold jerky and meat. I was never one. Yeah, I know it's crazy.
No, it's interesting.
I was never. Yeah, I was never one to eat a lot of meat, at least land animals. I was consider myself at the time more of a pescatarian, but my mom grew us up to eat a lot of veggies and vegetables. So something like veganism wasn't far off, but I never really thought too much about it. I'd never faced a lot of vegan activism. No one had ever tried to get me to go vegan. It wasn't something that I knew a lot about. So it came to me sort of as more of a personal revelation. A lot of people, they would like cite like something on YouTube that they saw or slaughterhouse footage or something like that. But for me,
Right.
it was just the isolation, the time being around meat all the time. And, people were asking me like, if people, because like I was working at a meat shop, people would like offer me like to try out jerky and things like that, and I have to be like, it's not, I don't eat that. But it got me questioning why not?
Right.
Why not try this out? And it got me to think more about the non-human individuals that lose their lives, that are subjugated, that are oppressed, and used in order to obtain these products that we don't need to live our lives.
And how did you segue from that into attaching or connecting with the Raven Corps organization? How did that happen for you?
So attaching to the Raven Corps, that actually happened through TikTok because I had met, I started to gain like a bit of like a group of like mutuals on TikTok. Mutuals are people who follow each other. So we follow each other back, and like, we were kind of in like a small community. We would comment on each other's videos. It was kind of the first kind of activism that I really got into. No air quotes. It was genuine activism. I was talking online about veganism, making some funny stuff, but also genuine content that was meant to, like, make people think a little bit, or just push community before I really had gotten out onto the streets. So one of my mutuals online was a member of the Raven Corps, and she was talking to me about it, and I was like, yeah, that actually seems really cool and interesting. And from there, I reached out to Claire and had an interview. It was really cool, really chill, and that's history. And I ended
And
up
then
joining the Raven Corps.
the rest is history. So when you
Yeah.
became part of that, was that something where the group meets as a group, that you come together as a community, actually physically, or is it virtually, or how do people come together in Raven Corp themselves to kind of toss their ideas around and to organize and to implement? How does that happen?
Yeah, so it's mostly digital just because we're like multi-state, like um
Right.
it's a national organization. It's based out of Portland, Oregon. Those are the foundings, but anybody from anywhere in the country can join and work with, and we work off of Discord. So it's mostly an online community, but whenever we can find a chance, to get as many people together to do an action, something like that, then we do. And I've been a part of couple group meetups, and those have been really amazing. It's different, and it's, in my opinion, it's better when you can really connect in person, meet people, hang out, and toss ideas back and forth.
So since it is so national and maybe even international, I don't know. When you're reaching out, you've obviously got people in many different cities and different states. About how many members are part of Raven Corps? Do you have any idea what the membership would be of the organization itself? I'm just very curious to see how many people are involved in it.
That's tough.
Okay.
Just because more than like, there are like people, there's like a smaller amount of people who are regularly active in our Discord server, and that's unfortunately not as many people as we would like. In terms of like the total amount of people who are considered a part of the Raven Corps, I
Right.
would not be entirely sure what that number is. It's probably more people than I've seen or interacted with, but it's
Right.
kind of tough to gauge those kind of numbers, considering activity fluctuates and people come in and out, and you don't really know if someone's like a part of it anymore. Sometimes people will come back from being inactive, so it's kind of tough to gauge those numbers.
So if you're mobilizing to an action, let's say, and then we're going to get into mind over milk. I want to go there with you, but when
Yeah.
you're mobilizing for a particular action, and I see where something like mind over milk would be a very national campaign, but I'm also assuming that you must do some local community things in various communities and states. So when you try to organize that kind of an action, is that more of a hands-on, boots on the ground group of people that actually do something physically in that environment, in that community? How does it get mobilized, and what's the mechanics of boots on the ground for Raven Corps? How does that work?
Yeah, so we do this thing called grassroots games, which is kind of a way to get members of Raven Corps and other people active. in their community with things like stickering and like leafleting and other things like that are in person so that we can get people on the ground, like you said, and mobilize to do things. In terms of other stuff like protest and outreach, we have done events where individuals like will table after schools, talking about things like the dairy industry, like we'll talk about the Mind Over Milk thing. But as the current campaign coordinator for Mind Over Milk, I do want to take us into a direction where we are doing more boots on the ground organizing. And I do a lot of other
Okay.
activism in general that incorporates that kind of in-person protesting boots on the ground stuff. So I probably pull from that experience.
I'm here. We're going to take just a few seconds to take a little break and hear from our sponsor, the National Health Association. I'm here with Onyx from the Raven Corps, which is a youth-centered activist movement to really using the foundation of veganism, really creating more justice and dealing with the oppression of industries and governments and the things that are really creating a lot of negativity. So it's a really positive, uplifting movement, which is what I love about it. So we're going to take a few minutes here from our sponsor, the NHA, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the NHA Health Science Podcast. Dr. Frank Sabatino here. Are you ready for an extraordinary adventure that combines relaxation, exploration, and vibrant health? Then set your sails for the NHA plant-exclusive cruises. Imagine cruising through exotic destinations, savoring delectable plant-based cuisine, and engaging in rejuvenating activities, all while surrounded by like-minded individuals passionate about health and wellness. These cruises offer more than just a vacation. They offer an opportunity to immerse yourself in the NHA's principles of healthy living. And they rank incredibly high on the ratings of eco-friendly cruise lines. We all know how important our oceans are, and our cruise partner, Windstar, is fully committed to this. Join us aboard our upcoming plant-exclusive cruises and experience the synergy of health and leisure. Delight in gourmet SOS-free meals prepared by talented chefs, attend informative workshops, and enjoy the serenity of the sea, all tailored to nourish your body, mind, and spirit. For more details and to reserve your spot on our next adventure, visit healthscience.org and click the link under Travel. Don't miss this chance to indulge in a wellness retreat like no other. Elevate your well-being and make memories that will last a lifetime. And remember, your feedback matters. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening to the NHA Health Science Podcast. I'm Dr. Frank Sabatino, your host. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to the Health Science Podcast. I'm here with Onyx from Raven Corps. So when you guys, this is an interesting piece for me because then we'll get into Mind Over Milk. I'm assuming the range of ages of your group center around probably high school to early college years. Was that the window kind of that we would talk about? Is there an upper limit?
High school.
Is there an upper limit and a lower limit of age that makes a person ready for this group? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, if I can remember correctly, our like age range to be a Raven is like, I think it starts at 14 or 15, and then it goes to like 23 or 24. So that's kind of like the age range that you're working with to be a Raven and part of the Raven Corps. That's considered our
And then I notice you have an
activism.
opportunity for people that are older than that to become kind of like ancillary support people. You have a name for that. I forgot what the name is, but I know that they can be supportive of the group, even if they are not absolute members of the group. So you have an opportunity to bring in support from ages around that, so to speak, which is really cool. So let's jump into, because you're the coordinator, let's jump into this idea of what you call online operations. And these are really activist stances where you're really trying to dismantle or at least address systems of oppression involved in way animals are treated for food production, also social justice, And in this particular operation, Mind Over Milk, you're the coordinator. So talk us through the Mind Over Milk campaign, what it's about, why it's so much a passion for you, and the importance of it as you see it as part of an operation.
Yeah. So I'm very passionate about all of this because it incorporates our theme of collective liberation, which is working to liberate all of the individuals in our world, including our Earth. So non-human animals, but also the people in our world. And that speaks to me very personally because I would consider myself a very empathetic person. So I like to do things that I feel can benefit the world around me and benefit the individuals around me. Mind Over Milk specifically is one of our campaigns that, and all of our campaigns seek to do this, but empower our theme and message of collective liberation. So with Mind Over Milk, we have themes of animal liberation, of course, the dairy cows that are subjected to horrific treatment and exploitation that's completely unnecessary. We have human liberation in terms of the individuals that are on the National School Lunch Program that are pretty much forced to use dairy milk and drink dairy milk when they don't know they have better options, and the dairy industry has such a tight hold on the National School Lunch Program. And then there's the earth, the environment, because of the severe environmental impacts that dairy has on the planet.
Well, it's interesting because, and I know there are about 100,000 schools on the National School Lunch Program. And so, making a dent and making available non-dairy, plant-based milks in that option I'm sure it's a huge effort and a huge task to kind of make a dent on that. And actually, those choices are, as you made the point, not only are they so violent and abusive for the animals involved, but it's almost a racial motivation, because if you think about it, the lactose intolerance in ethnic populations is significantly greater than in Caucasian populations. So if you look at African Americans or Orientals or Native Americans, or you find that the actual intolerance to milk actually fosters a whole pattern of irritable bowel and diseases. So by forcing children to consume those animal dairy products in a school lunch program is a social injustice, as well as it is an animal liberation issue. So it's a very big piece. So how do you mobilize a task like that, an operation like that, where you're trying to approach a school system that's 100,000 schools in a national school lunch program? Do you just try to single out one or two schools to begin with, or one school to begin with, and see if you can make a dent, and from that try to go forward? How do you mobilize your forces and your resources in that Mind Over Milk campaign? Talk us through that.
100%. So initially with the Mind Over Milk campaign, what a lot of our energy was going towards was educational outreach and pushing legislation. So in terms of educational outreach, we were, getting individuals, students specifically, to table at their schools to talk to us about their experiences in the National School Lunch Program, and to just get information out there to other students, other people about, the National School Lunch Program and the issues with dairy that target non-human animals, humans, and the environment. And then on the legislative front, we've been backing and putting our energy behind the Add Soy Act, which would make it so that schools are required to provide nutritionally adequate non-dairy milks, because in the National School Lunch Program stipulations, schools are allowed to provide that as an alternative, but schools aren't required to. And
Mm-hmm.
it's different with dairy milk because schools are 100%, they are required to provide dairy milk. That's a requirement by schools in the National School Lunch Program, as opposed to non-dairy milk, which they're not required to provide unless, a student has a specific, like, doctor's notice as a disability that
Right.
requires them And a lot of these students that are on national school lunch programs, like we talked about with that you mentioned with like the race issue, are ethnic minorities and also obviously people of worse financial situations. So
Right.
accessing that kind of information is going to be a lot more difficult for someone in that position.
So let's talk about what have you seen as far as results in what you guys have been doing. Talk us through about how it's progressing, how long it's been going on, and how you see changes that may be being made because of it.
So one thing is I've been recently put on as the campaign coordinator for Mind Over Milk, and we're trying to find a new direction to take it because that's one of the issues that we've been having. So far, it's been just educational outreach and trying to push for the Add Soy Act, and just looking at it realistically, it hasn't been super effective in kind of generating the potential that we want to see. What we have gotten very through our interactions with people on the street that we've done through leafleting and stuff, we've gotten very, very positive reactions. People tend to react positively when you're talking about issues that harm kids, that harm minorities, that harm people who
Mhm.
are of lower wealth and income. So people tend to respond very positively to that, but we haven't seen much potential, like actual real change in terms of the Add Soy Act. So what I've been doing as campaign coordinator is I've been trying to find new directions that we can push this campaign in order to maybe see more of that change.
Have you seen any changes in any schools that you've worked with?
In my experience, we haven't seen any schools like adopt any new policies. It's largely because it's the national school lunch programs policies that these schools are forced to
Right. And
that
you're
they're
and you're
forced
buck
to
and you're buck
listen.
and you're bucking a system that's also being subsidized really to have
100%.
animal-based milk. So you're battling that. It almost seems like you would have to partner up with somebody that would actually donate more of these plant-based milks in a certain way to kind of get the ball rolling to counter that subsidization process, which is just economic oppression. I mean, it's just really oppressive. So but I mean, I give you a lot of credit for the way you guys are pushing at this. And does it look like there's a little more light at the end of the tunnel with this? Are you feeling that maybe there is going to be some real positive change that will happen soon? What's your feeling? What's your gut feeling about it?
My gut feeling is that it's honestly too early to say.
Okay.
We're in like early planning stages of the next part and the next like push of our campaign. So I'm still working on strategy and research and things like that. And it's I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be very tough, very difficult. You're going against, like you said, an industry that's very heavily subsidized, but also puts a lot of money into lobbying as well, and
Absolutely.
lobbying these political candidates and things like that. So it's gonna be a tough battle. I'm not going to be like super pessimistic and say there's no way, because I definitely believe that there is a way forward, and I do believe that there is a genuine chance at potential change, but it's going to need all hands on deck. It's going to need as many people supporting it and pushing for it as possible in order to be a successful campaign and reach that light at the end of the tunnel, because I do see one. I do see a light.
That's beautiful. Onyx, where can people find more about Raven Core and the operations that you're doing? What's the URL you want them to go to? So we'll put it across the screen.
Yeah, you can go to the Ravencore corps.org, and you
Perfect.
can just check that out and get involved with us. Um, set up set up interviews and things like that. Set up little meetings and join our Discord server and things like that, all through the website. And we also have an Instagram page, which is also at the Ravencore CORPS, and you can see what the stuff that we do online there. We're pretty active there. At least we're trying to be active there on the
Well, it's
Instagram.
no, but
But
it's a really nice online presence. I went through all of it. I think it's fantastic. So let
thank
me
you.
ask you a question, because one of the working models and part of the mission of your group is that you guys are not afraid to let your voices be heard. You've been handed, really, in some ways, a lot of crap, the sins of the father, meaning what came before you created a lot of the devastating outcomes that we see in oppression and social injustice and so on. And I give you tremendous credit, your whole organization, for wanting to stand up to that. I grew up in the 1960s. That was a big part of what we did back then too. I mean, we had no fear of standing up and speaking our mind. So when you talk about lobbying and things like that, do you have any kind of grassroots members of your group that actually, as youth, go to the lobbying forces, even in Congress? Do you go to Washington? Do you have people that will actually do that from within your group, or maybe within your group and the support of people like Claire Howell and people of that ilk that are kind of coming together? Because I know collaboration is a big part of what your organization is about. How do we collaborate and uplift each other and uplift our activist approach? So do you have any of that in place where people are literally going to deal with the lobbies themselves at a congressional level?
Yeah. So on one hand, like you said about collaboration, we are in talks with some other vegan animal rights organizations that do have more of a focus on legislation and lobbying and stuff. And while I can't say too much at the moment, it looks like a pretty good it looks pretty good for the campaign in terms of the direction that we can take it. And last year, over the summer, we did go to Washington D.C. in person and do some protesting and do a bunch of leafleting about the Add Soy Act. So in terms of strictly about lobbying, I don't think we've done too much yet, but that is somewhere that I want to take the campaign, because it is a place where you see a lot of the power and influence in the dairy industry. So it's certainly one
And I
place that I
think,
want to target more.
and I think your voices need to be heard. I really do, and I really believe that there would be an audience for your voices, because you've got a future direction for really addressing some problems that threaten the survival of all of us and this beautiful planet on which we live. And so, the activism that you're expressing, I think, I love the fact that you guys are putting that kind of energy out. I give you a tremendous amount of credit, because I also feel that because of the things you've been handed, there can be a lot of discomfort, a lot of anxiety, a lot of upset in the younger generation of people, because you can look out and say, my God, look at this stuff. Are we going to be able to survive this? And you guys take a really positive, uplifting view and say, you know what, as negative as it may seem, by taking these positive steps, at least we have a fighting chance to dismantle and address and maybe rebuild some of these systems in a way that will create a more sustainable, compassionate planet, which is what we're trying to do anyway. So and do you feel that that's a reality in the young people you meet, that you see more angst and anxiety and upset because of the dissonance that we see in the environment and the climate and the abuse to animals and these industries of destruction that are around us? Do you feel that that's a reality that you have to also address in your generation?
100%. I, it might just be the circles that I tend to surround myself in, but everyone's like upset about everything, like all the time, whether it's specifically about what happens to non-human animals, whether it's what happens to human individuals, especially with places that the U.S. has sunken its teeth into,
Yeah.
or whether it's whether it's the environment, and all this stuff coincides. It's all linked together, and that's really the message of the Raven Core. It's that all of our liberation is connected, and that veganism means consistent anti-oppression anywhere.
As we look toward a bit of a future, what other operations are on the horizon for Raven Corps? What do you see happening? Where do you see the energy of the organization mobilizing? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, so we are currently in talks about potential next steps, potential other campaigns that we would do alongside Mind Over Milk. So Mind Over Milk isn't one of the only. Obviously, we want to do other campaigns. We're thinking about doing stuff with prisons and how those and how prisons are linked to like slaughterhouse work and things like that, which is very interesting. I can't go into too much detail because obviously we don't even know too much about what we're going to be going next, but that seems like a very likely direction.
And so you guys have meetups and meetings to kind of discuss these future directions. Is that how it goes?
Yeah, we set up Zoom meetings and stuff.
Does someone like a Claire Howell, who has this incredible background in animal law, because she's really incredibly trained in that aspect, is she still a resource? I know she calls herself the Mother Raven, the Mother Bird of the group. So does she stay active with the organization in her own way?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we're
Okay.
always in contact with her, and she's the glue. She's our Mother Raven.
Yeah,
And
she's a mama bird. I know that.
yeah, Mama Bird, Claire.
So I know you guys also talk about, this is heavy work when you're really trying to dismantle systems of oppression. I noticed that one of the things you wrote was that you also try to have fun, and the camaraderie of your group and coming together and the socialization and community of that buttresses everybody too in a really beautiful way, because it has to be, if you think about it, this lifestyle we're recommending is trying to create a world of compassion and love where we really stay connected and know that we are connected to each other. All life is connected. So you guys make an effort to continue that element of joy, I gather, in the way and the ways that you're working, even when it gets kind of heavy, when you're dealing with heavy issues. Is that correct?
Yes, 100%. It's really the only way to continue to stay as an activist. I've seen it firsthand, the kind of burnout that can accrue when you're doing activism constantly, and you don't make any time for enjoyment, for relaxation, and that can
Right.
and it will destroy you. So that's why we try to incorporate joy. That's why it is a fundamental tenet, it's a fundamental pillar of our organization, because that's the only way that we'll stay sustainable as activists, and that's the kind of world that we want to create. So we want to fight in the same way we want to live, you know?
Right. You want to fight and live, and we want to really create something that's equitable and justice for all, which is really the goal of all of this from the get-go. I mean, truthfully, out of the blocks. As we wind this down, Onyx, is there any final words you'd like to share with the audience out here? Is there anything that you'd like to impart to them and share with them?
I would just want to say that if you're even thinking, if there's like a little twinkling of an idea that maybe this is something that you're interested in, if you're interested in working with the Raven Corps, just reach out. Just reach out to us. Go to the website, take a look, and reach out to us. Promise we're very friendly. And we love to have new faces, new voices, and we're always open to hear new ideas and listen. And that's the only way that we're going to be successful in any kind of fight towards collective liberation. It's listening to each other and realizing that we may be wrong. I mean, pretty much all of us, realized that we were wrong when we were consuming non-human animals and we were consuming their products. So we can't just stop there. We always have to be thinking forward and be open to new ideas, new possibilities. And if you want to be a part of that, we would love to have you come join us.
That's beautiful. I can't thank my guest Onyx enough today, coming from Raven Corps, and you can see the URL scrolling across the screen. Please follow them, go online, support them, turn on to the beautiful work they're doing, their operations they're doing to try to really create a more sustainable, just world through veganism and through activism, centered in compassion, love, joy, and just hard work to really start dismantling some of these systems of oppression that have been so incorporated into our culture for so long. And I can't thank you enough, Onyx, for being here with us today. And I thank our audience for all of you out there, because without you, we can't do what we do. I want to thank you for being part of this really healthy community. And on behalf of the National Health Association, I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I look forward to being with you on the next episode of the Health Science Podcast. Thank you so much, Onyx. Really so appreciated. So grateful. Thank you.
It's great to be here, Frank. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association. Thank you for joining us today and for your commitment to evidence-based health science that backs a whole food, plant-exclusive lifestyle and contributes to the well-being of all people, animals, and our environment. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino. Be sure to leave a rating and a review, and we'll see you on the next show.